All right, everybody, welcome. The Ag Center here, Cassandra Fazy speaking. We're really excited to have our first ever webinar with SWIIM Systems. We really enjoyed having them as our affiliate. They're a really awesome company to work with. So we're really excited to jump on this webinar with you guys to introduce ourselves as the Ag Center and then dive a little bit deeper into exactly SWIIM's company and what they do. So to start off, my name is Cassandra Fazy. I'm the program director here at the Ag Center. As some of you might know, some of you might not know, but the Ag Center essentially is a one-stop shop for farmers and growers to collaborate with ag service companies. So in 2018, it was founded by Doug Bruner and three other of the owners, Keith Yamamoto, Stephanie Steelman, and Chris Morgner, with this concept of creating a place where farmers and growers could come directly to find quality ag service companies. That being said, it would range from irrigation to water accounting to aerial imaging to roto control, kind of what you need from A to Z as a farmer or grower during your lifespan of your crop. I think that there are personally two different sides to the Ag Center. One obviously being a place where the farmer or grower can come to find solutions for their farm, and we can help them provide them with quality ag service companies. And another being a location where ag service companies can collaborate with one another. So, having a development team, starting off maybe a new property, implementing irrigation, having land leveling available to you, having orchard removal services available to you. So kind of creating almost a package-like concept for farmers and growers, making it less time on their hands looking for service companies, but also providing them with quality, good customer service, and companies that are going to get the project done at the end of the day. So that's kind of the overall theme to the Ag Center. As of right now, we have 21 different companies that are affiliated with the Ag Center. And the Ag Center's headquarters are located in Merced, California. We just opened this last January, our newest location in Tulare. So slowly but surely, we are expanding throughout California and hopefully eventually beyond. And if you guys have any additional questions or any more, more detailed questions, feel free to ask me once Kevin takes it on here after this webinar. I will be definitely available for all that. But Kevin, we're really excited to do this today with you. Super excited to collaborate with SWIIM. Take it away.
Cassandra, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being a member of the Ag Center. I think when we started, you guys had 4 or 5 members, and now you just exploded. The concept that Doug and the team put together was just so needed for the ag community to bring vendors and growers together. So many opportunities for growers to find solutions in the marketplace. The fact that you guys are now along 99, basically from Bakersfield all the way north past Fresno, it's just great. We're honored to be part of it. We love what you guys are doing, and I just hope you keep growing. So yeah. Thanks so much. Much appreciated. Okay, everyone, happy day. Nothing like a webinar to finish off the rest of the week. I appreciate everyone jumping on. We've done a handful of these, and it seems like every time we do one, our viewership grows. So, well, maybe one of the benefits of COVID, more folks have a little bit of time to get online and learn about technologies and solutions within their ecosystem. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about dashboards and how those can, we're going to use SWIIM as an example, but we're going to talk globally about dashboards and how you can benefit by getting that type of data into the palm of your hands to make decisions on your ag operation. I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes on SWIIM just to give you a quick high level, because then that'll make the rest of the presentation flow a bit better when we're showing some screenshots of dashboard layouts and whatnot. So just a little bit about SWIIM. We are a crop water budget accounting service, and we provide similar services to the ag water community as your CPA or accounting firm might provide for your financial accounts. A lot of comparisons there are very similar to what we do. We provide mesh delivery and consumption reports by field near real time, and those reports are audited by our quality assurance department. So you think about, you go to your CPA and you have all of your money sources coming into your company, or maybe even your personal account, whether you're using QuickBooks or Quicken for your personal accounts, and then all your money going out to different locations. You get to a situation where you want to know what they call sub-accounts, where all of that money is going, so that you can better budget, better account, and be a better financial fiduciary for your operation or your home. And that's in essence what we do for the water budget. Interesting thing, when you combine delivery data, whether you have surface, groundwater, or both put together, some folks have both, regardless of your water source, if you add that up and then you take the consumption data and you mesh those together and you divide those two values, you get a calculation that we call the consumptive use fraction. It's more commonly known as irrigation efficiency. So you're growing almonds as an example, you may be 50, 60, 70% efficient when you start this journey of tracking your water usage. That means, as an example, let's say it's 60%, 60% of that water went to growing the crop and the other 40% went somewhere else. And so we tell you where that water went, how much it cost you, all of the information that you need to make decisions around your water budget. And we use this called temporal tracked data. So think about it over a period of time for a moment. You irrigate your field, consumption begins, consumption continues after you stop that irrigation event. And you start seeing a curve of consumption that occurs, and maybe that veers into the next irrigation event, maybe it doesn't. But it's all happening in real time together. And so what SWIIM basically does is it balances that water budget each and every day. And so as you're doing that every day, you start seeing new information coming to your fingertips, normally through the dashboard or through the reports, that give you the ability to make new decisions. And so that's in essence what we do. What a water balance is basically tracking all the water that enters and leaves the field. And of course, it's going to come from irrigation, surface or groundwater, or both, if you have both, precipitation, and then that water exits the field either through evapotranspiration, evaporation and crop growth, of course, surface runoff, or subsurface runoff. So we attempt to attach values to each of those inputs or outputs in both volume and dollar amounts. This isn't sampled data. This is real-time field-wide survey type data, because again, we're balancing that quote unquote checkbook each and every day for you. And then at the end of the season, we can give you some real meaningful data to make decisions with. Reasons to do a water balance: multidimensional look at your water application and consumption. Many of you have access to some water flow data, whether it's a flow meter in the field, whether it's a dashboard that might show you when your pump's on and off, might even show you at a particular period of time how much is going through that pipe or that channel. Some of you may even get cumulative data for each irrigation set. Well, normally what we find is that's about as far as it goes. And that's good data. It's a good starting point. It gives you some insights to make some decisions with. But we take it to a whole new level of meshing that delivery and consumption data and providing other key metrics. For example, that consumptive use fraction I mentioned at the beginning. We can measure best irrigation practices. It really is a measure of best irrigation practices. We can flag under and over irrigation events. We can help you determine when to irrigate. Monitor and reporting services also give you data to back you with regulatory agencies. So in some cases, we report that data with your permission as the grower directly to the state, to the county. If you're doing it manually or you don't want to provide that data, if the day ever comes where you need it, and we're seeing in certain regions that's becoming more and more of a pressure point, it's like the audit that you might or might not get with the IRS, right? If they come calling, your CPA's got your back with the data. That's what we're doing here. We're providing and we're creating a use baseline of your water use. And with that baseline, you can benchmark. So you can start at the beginning of the season, and let's say that irrigation efficiency percentage is low. Let's say it's 60%. We have growers that start ticking upward. I'll show you an example a little bit later in the presentation where they start ticking upward and improving on that irrigation efficiency. The end of that season, we complete a final audit of your water usage, and then we give you an irrigation efficiency for the season. You can then use that data to start for the next season and continue to improve upon it. With that, we also have clients that utilize SWIIM certification, which is a certification, you can see the mark here, that you can place on your product. We have lots of growers now in this most recent harvest season in the Central Valley that are attaching that certification stamp to their product. They're using it for better product placement, and in some cases, better rates when they're selling their products. Inputs for water balance, rainfall, irrigation deliveries, crop-specific evapotranspiration, field size, we need to know that, crop information, and then the planting and the harvest dates gives us the bookends, if you will, the starting point and the ending point in which to balance that water budget. It's the same way you'd have to give bookends to your CPA, be your fiscal year, maybe it's January 1st through December 31st. That's the bookends in which he or she's operating to balance your bank account. That's the same comparison here for your water account. Additional comparative data. Some growers use soil moisture, plant health data, weather. The list is really endless. And so that data can sit resident on the dashboard right next to your water balance data. And especially soil moisture, folks can start using our water balance data to compare against what they think is happening in the soil and see how accurate they are or aren't. Okay, let's talk about the meat of the matter here, and that's the dashboard. What is a dashboard? Some of you know, some of you have no dashboards that you're operating with. Some of our clients tell us before they use SWIIM, they have 3, 4, 5, 7, I think 7 is the most we've heard, different dashboards that they log into to schedule irrigation, to see their flow, to see what's happening with the soil moisture sensors, to see their climatic data, whatever the case may be. They have 6 or 7 usernames, 6 or 7 passwords. They log in, that data looks different on every dashboard. It's not what we call normalized data. And quite frankly, biggest complaint, it's a pain in the you-know-what for most of our growing community to deal with so much data. They can't put data stream A over here together with B and make any kind of decisions. So that's one of the things that whether it's SWIIM's dashboard or any other dashboard, you should be looking for is one that can bring in different points of data. Allows for customization and standardization of that data. So some units come in acre inches, some come in acre feet, some's coming in cubic feet per second, some's coming in metric, some of it's coming in this and that, different sources. What you can do is make these what we call widgets normalized so that you're comparing apples to apples. And that's one of the first things we do, whether someone just buys a water balance package or they're buying water balance and adding some additional data, is we normalize that data so that they can look at it and make sense of it. It's unified, it's consistent, the data is protected. No one else is going to get your data unless you want us to give it to someone else. And in some cases, growers want that. In some cases, they don't. And then the most important thing, I believe, is that we practice this, and other companies do too, not everyone, but this concept of data and source agnostic behavior. And what that means is that the source of the data isn't important to us as long as it's quality data. So, sometimes when you buy a package, whatever it is, you have to buy proprietary equipment, you have to buy this, you have to buy that to make the thing work. With SWIIM, if you have all equipment in the field, and with other providers as well, not just SWIIM, if you have the right equipment and it's calibrated, they can connect into it and give you the service. They don't have to upsell you more equipment. That's our goal, personally at SWIIM, is to provide you the data, not to sell you more equipment, boat anchors that can sit out in the field. That allows you maximum flexibility. We currently have 2 weather sources. We have 2 satellite sources, multiple data streams, because in some cases, one data stream is not going to work in one region, right? We have regions that we rely heavier on weather data to estimate consumption, and other areas we rely heavier on satellite data. We use both and mesh those together. So to us, it's about using the best data for the application. So what kind of dashboard data is relevant? We call this a widget, and you saw it on the earlier screen. Once you get your data into a good, solid dashboard, you can then manipulate that data and display it in a way that makes sense to you. And depending, I'm going to give you a couple of use case examples here of where we've seen that And then you can use your mind to think about how that would change for your particular application. But not all data is created equal, and not all data is as important as other data. So take example, our primary example here. This is a water balance widget. This takes cumulative deliveries from surface and ground, puts it all together in one graph, and then consumption. And what this gives the grower a good understanding of how close they're coming against delivery and consumption, right? Are they applying too much water? So that's one widget that would be useful. I think every one of our clients has this widget. I can't think of one right out the gate that doesn't. Some growers, that's good enough. Other growers want to add to that water balance widget. That's depicted here in the second display of data. This shows a target. And so what this grower has done is set a target delivery that they want to hit or be below, right? So this could be historical data. This could be provided by the irrigation district. This particular widget is used heavily in Southern California, areas of Colorado and Arizona. And we're starting to see it used now in the south part of the San Joaquin Valley, where growers know that they're going to have to reduce their water usage. So they start with their current baseline because they know they can produce 100% output on their crop with that baseline, and they're trying to lower it below that. And that's what you're seeing depicted here. This is the same delivery and consumption data you're seeing here, or same type of data. Again, that grower's trying to keep the delivery and consumption line as close together as they can. But the other thing they're trying to do in this widget is keep it below this black line, which this particular grower is. So that visually tells the grower they're doing a good job. They can then dive into the dashboard or the underlying reports to see what that means to them in volume, as far as actual water saved, and of course, dollars and cents, which is probably the most important metric most growers look at. All of our growers now are using this irrigation efficiency widget. That's that consumptive use fraction I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. And again, you can see here, this particular grower a week ago was 4% lower than they are now. So that tells me that this grower a week or two ago was about 58% efficient. Now that grower is up to 62, and that trend line is going up. So they're making changes on their operation, change practices. Again, we don't define what they are, but they need to be. The grower generally knows. But they make little tweaks here and there, and then they see per field how that's resulting, not only in percentage, but again, volume and dollars and cents. Growers use other widgets. So soil moisture is important to some. A mapping widget, most dashboards have some mapping widget. Inflow, if it's on within their, when it is on, the week is precipitation, grower degree days. We have a planned available water widget we can use for soil moisture. Point is once you get this data into the system, the short answer is it's really up to you to determine how you best use it. Most dashboards, and not all of them, but most of them allow you to configure it in a way that makes sense to you. In our case, most growers will configure it by field or by data type. And so what you see here is a basic dashboard. You've got the dashboard menu pane here to the left. You have a main menu, and then under here you have sub dashboards. This happens to show the type of data. So some growers will set all of their weather data on one dashboard for all their fields individually. So field A will have weather data, field B, field C. Soil moisture, they'll have all their soil moisture data by field. So each widget, each one of these blocks will show a different field. Alternatively, some growers use it and set up a dashboard for every field, and they put all their pertinent data into that dashboard view. So you might see field A, you might see a main dashboard that has high level water usage data right up here, and then field A detail, field B, field C, field C, D, etc. And then you'll see the data that they choose to put on their dashboard. So that might be a map. If you click on that map on the real dashboard, it pops up an overlay and allows you to see certain data like NDVI layer, consumption data, soil surveys, detailed data from equipment that's in the field, that sort of thing. You can also see widgets here, water balance, crop ET for almonds, and then the irrigation flow. And you see this one's in red. It's an alarm condition, so there's a problem with that sensor, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a moment. You can normally expand the widget. I showed you the little small box on your screen, and that's great, but I'm finding as I'm getting older, I need stronger bifocals, and I can't see as well as I could 5, 6, 7 years ago. So I'm looking at a screen like this, I can't see too well. But if I click on that widget, it expands and becomes bigger, and then I can see way better and more data on that widget. So this one's an alarm as an example, which means that it's not operating properly. When the widget is in alarm, it also alerts you by text, email, or phone call, your option. So you know if this flow point's got a problem, it's going to tell you when it happens, so you can get out there and get it fixed. Right now, it's not flowing any water, and the alarm condition's set in this case for 400 to 1200 GPM. So when this unit's on, it needs to be churning out between 400 and 1200 GPM in delivery. Apparently, that didn't happen. You have to go into the widget to find out why in the data stream. You can also see things like weekly change. The last day, our data science team quality checked the data. Not all companies do this, but we happen to provide quality assurance on our data. So everything here in green has been checked by a person, or our algorithms kicked out no problems, and that person's checked off that the data is good. Because remember, at the end of the season, it's like your CPA would for your financial records. We're going to provide an audited report, so we like to get in front of it early. You can see kind of the trend line of that particular flow point. You can set custom from and to dates, set new alarm conditions, format the widget, add data streams, that sort of thing. And then you can make that widget small again and summarize it. You can also normally see in a dashboard layout, regardless of whose it is, multiple sources of data on one graph. And that's useful, right? Because again, the biggest thing we hear from growers is, I don't need more data. I've got more data than I have now. I just don't know how to use it. And so one of our goals at SWIIM is when that data is fed into the dashboard is to make sense of it, help you make sense of it. And part of that is how we display it. So you get to decide what's important. It's going to, again, vary grower by grower. So our onboarding team helps you depending on the challenges you're dealing with. And the data we provide here is relevant for your particular application. So this one is set up to show only 3 data sources. It can show 1, it can show 2, it can show 8. Most of them we show 3 to 6 on average. What this is showing is total sources of water. So this could be a field with groundwater and surface water, and that's the aggregate water volume that's being delivered during that time period. Then we have green down here, which is the consumption. Of course, that's going to generally be lower than delivery, and that's going to show you the consumption on the field. Then down here is the subsurface and surface outflow, so the water leaving the system that's not going to grow crop. If you highlight over each line, you can see kind of graphically how that works. You can see at a particular point in time what that value is for each of those trend lines. So on August 6th, if I had it hovered over the real dashboard at 1 p.m., that's where we were at. So again, it's important to customize these widgets so that you're getting the data that you need, because a whole bunch more data doesn't necessarily help the situation. It's targeting that data and giving you the information you need. Most dashboards will have satellite or aerial overlays if they provide that level of service. So you guys might remember the last couple of slides back, there was a map widget on one of those dashboards. If you click on that, that expands to something like this. And what that does is it allows you to overlay data on top of a map and see what it means specifically to your field, which is outlined with the sensors. And then, of course, pixel by pixel, you can start seeing, in this case, we're looking at ET data on this date. It's temporal. So you can go back in time and see what was happening a day or two or a week or whatever the case may be prior to. And you can choose which overlay. So we have ET layers, we have an NDVI layer for crop stress and soil survey. Those are the most common 4 that we provide on the dashboard. Incidentally, the same ET data we're using here to show you visually is the same data we're using to balance your water budget. So you can see it in graph form, which some folks with a technical background much prefer because it's data. For those that are more visually oriented or trying to make decisions based off of what they're seeing on the graphs, wanting to see what's actually happening in the field, before they go out and kick the dirt, they can go online here and take a look at the visual layout. The bottom line here is a dashboard should simplify what's otherwise a complex process. And so Our complex process with SWIIM happens to be accounting for ag water, which ain't easy. If you think about how that whole process works high level, most of our growers have surface and or groundwater, and they add those together in their head, and they have this available water pool that they can use. They then have to get it pumped or piped or otherwise transferred to each of their farms, and then each of those farms have different fields, different needs for application and potential consumption. So every place you have a question mark here, we have to answer that question for the grower. And there's lots of stuff, as most of you know, from here to here that can go wrong in that process. So instead of putting this graph up for growers to try to get an idea, we make sense of the data in more of an intuitive way. We show them that field level data. We see how that expands to a farm level, and then multiple farms to an entire ranch level. And it just makes it easier. So the goal is to simplify the data. If you're using a dashboard, and again, many of our clients are using dashboards that don't simplify the process, whether you use SWIIM or another dashboard, you got to find another option because it's not going to do you any good. Here's an interesting statement. If you already have automation or irrigation scheduling equipment in the field, you likely can already benefit from a dashboard, and you can likely receive SWIIM water balance data. We've had clients call us up and tell us they had equipment in the field for years that have been pushing data to the cloud that they've never seen, or flow meters that they've installed that have the ability to hook up to telemetry, and the wires are hanging out of the unit on the side of the pump and go nowhere. It's like the flow meter to nowhere. And for a $5 fee, they can have that data sent to the cloud. So they've had many of our growers that have the ability, equipment-wise, either fully or mostly to receive this type of data stream, but they either haven't hooked it up, or it was hooked up and they're not availing themselves to the data that's available on the cloud. And if they happen to be availing themselves to that data, they're not getting it in this multidimensional view that really makes sense. It's that type of data, which is my pump's on and off. Good. That's good data. That tells you something. And it might also tell you how much is flowing at a particular period of time. But over time, that temporal data is what's critical to getting to the type of analytics to really analyze and figure out what your water balance is and what it should be moving forward. We like to call it the SWIIM umbrella. The SWIIM platform sits on top like an umbrella of equipment, telemetry, sensors, whatever the case may be, and can avail itself to that data. Many times we add data, like we pull weather station data and satellite data, and then we include that into the mix, and then that's what allows us to give you the water balance data. But it really does sit on top of your platform. It's not yet another system that you get to plug in and try to figure out. We connect with many over-the-counter equipment providers. Matter of fact, we have a list of them on our website if you want to go to it, and we just added 2 this week that aren't even up there. So if you have equipment and we don't have a connection, we'll build that connection, because that allows us then to connect SWIIM to that type of equipment. I'm going to play a quick video here from our friend Austin, one of our equipment integrator partners out of Central, which happens to be out of the Ag Center as well. They do a lot of work for us in Central, basically the San Joaquin Valley. So when he goes out and does an equipment install, he's looking at automation, he's looking at irrigation scheduling. A lot of this equipment he already knows has this type of technology embedded into it. So if you get someone smart like Austin, he'll come to you right out the gate and say, hey, there's other services like SWIIM, we can connect to it. If you get someone who may not realize how that works, you may not even know that you have the ability to do so. Austin's the exception to the rule. There's others out there, but that's the key, is to find someone that knows how that stuff works, because then when he's scoping out your site, or maybe he's already scoped it out and installed it, he can talk intelligently to you and tell you how easy it would be. Or if you, I'll give you an example. We just did a deployment about a month ago where they had about 90% of the equipment. They had to add 2 sensors and they were ready to go. And they have 14 fields. So they've made the capital investment in this equipment for other reasons, irrigation scheduling or whatnot. They now can add SWIIM at a very low incremental cost. Thanks for that, Austin. A little overview on folks that are in the field installing automation equipment and related types of technologies that can really put you in a position to increase the type of data stream that you're able to avail yourself to. So once that data comes in, what do you do with it, right? You can go to the dashboard, you can review it. That wouldn't be dissimilar to, you call up your bank or you go into QuickBooks or Quicken and you pull up a quick account summary. Let's say you're looking for a specific deposit or particular withdrawal out of the account, where it went. You can get that data pretty quick and easily through a dashboard. You want that more granular level data, every journal entry that made up that data stream, right? In our case, water balance work. There needs to be a report behind that. And so in our case, these reports are delivered via email. Starting next month, you'll be able to download them from the dashboard. And this is the secret sauce. This is every transaction that's happening. Delivered water, whether it's from precipitation, one of your water sources, evapotranspiration, and then we calculate what should be happening subsurface, and we add it to the water ledger. And so every transaction is captured. You can also pull from the high-level summary items that you can get from the dashboard as well, like this estimated consumed fraction. Remember, that's one of the widgets that we had available on the dashboard sample. You can look at effective rainfall as a percentage of your total rainfall and other high-level data, what's happening on each of your ranches in depth, volume, and again, in values, dollars. That same detail carries over into other areas. So we have the water balance report, and of course we have delivery. So in this case, we also provide a by delivery point data stream of how much in quantity and how much in dollar value. So each of these fields have a certain number of flow points. Some have 1, some have 2, some have 3. So they're a subset of the water delivery system to that field. And you can isolate each of those flow areas and make management decisions. As an example, some of our growers have a reservoir where they will place surface and groundwater sources in, and then, of course, disseminate water from there. They might be able to change their pumping time to a cheaper time to lower the cost of that water. They may be able to pull more surface at a different time of the season. When you get into volume and cost, you can make all kinds of decisions that you weren't able to make before. You were just kind of spitballing it and guessing, and you might be kind of right, but now kind of right isn't as important as being right on the ball with the way water sources are generally becoming more and more scarce in each of the regions we're operating. You'll notice down here, a grower will either put a cost or a value to that water. The reason why we set it up that way is some growers are interested in their overall cost, not just electricity, but they have fees in some cases to the district, to the county. They want a bundled all-in fee for every drop of water that's coming out of every flow point. So this allows them to add a little more granularity to what they were maybe historically doing, was estimating the power bill if they were pumping water. Some regions are getting paid to save. So we have, as an example, we have clients down in Southern California, and now this is again starting to happen out in the Bakersfield area where there's benefit or credits to showing saved water. And so that's the value of the water to them, which theoretically should be higher than their costs. Most growers will either plug a cost or a value, dollar value for each of their flow points in, and then of course they can make sense of it. And then that data flows throughout the entire platform. It goes from the delivery report to the water balance report. That then the same data stream can flow up to the dashboard, and you can make decisions based off of that. Again, the data is displayed on the dashboard and the report side, hopefully in the same way, if you're using a good solid dashboard. Another benefit of a dashboard allows you to view multiple sources of data and actually make sense of it. So in our example, or in our use case, we use weather. In most cases, each of our fields have 2 weather points of reference for estimating crop ET, reference ET, and then to crop ET, I should say. And then we have 1 of 2 satellite sources that roughly every 8 to 9 days flies over, takes a snapshot, and helps us course correct against the estimates that we're making with weather roughly every 15 seconds. So those 2 data sources are going to look different on a graph. There's a reason they're going to look different on a graph, and it can provide some interesting insight if you look at those 3 data sources separately. In other words, weather station, estimated ET, actual ET at each point in time, and then combining the two together. And that's another thing we do is we take that satellite data and then we go back to the last point where we have another satellite image and we actually soften or correct the curve. And so it allows us to use two different data points to improve the consumptive use data that we're processing for our clients, but it's tough to see it unless you can see it graphically. And that's what we're able to do with the dashboard. So it makes sense of comparing that data. I'll show you on a graph here, and hopefully this will help hit the point home. Plants age obviously over a season, right? You have a ET curve that's being developed as the season goes on. And at every specific point in time, that satellite flies over and takes a snapshot of your field and gives us actual ET for that field boundary. So we know at, let's say the satellite flies over at 1 in the afternoon, 1:06, takes a snapshot. At that time, your field was consuming X amount of water. Well, what do you do in between, right? I mean, you need, I mean, that's great to have that data point, but there's a lot of stuff happening in between, and that's where we use regional spatial data to fill in the gaps. And then every time we get a reading, we go back and course correct and we look at the trend. So we have a system that automatically does that. And then if we need to get some human help in there to adjust it, we'll do that as well. So seeing a slide like this and trying to understand that data stream as a grower is tough. You actually have to see your field. You have to see it on a graph and you have to say, okay, that's my data from this source. That's my data from that source. This is what I think is actually happening. And here's my delivery against that. Then it makes all the difference in the world. And that's the final slide I'm going to leave you with. This is the most popular view, we're told by our growers, that they access regularly. This graph is available as a widget. It's also updated within the report so that growers can grab it in whichever form and fashion that they see fit. But it provides great insight in a one graph outline. This light green line shows historical deliveries. It in essence shows a target. So this is what that grower was delivering prior to using SWIIM, at least as far as an estimate is concerned. So it may not be exact, but it's what the grower thinks they were delivering. In some cases, we do have data to fill this in. In some cases, it's a WAG, a wild ass guess, but it gives us some place to start. Then this blue line is actual deliveries. And the whole goal is to keep that blue line below the light green line. And you can see this grower happens to be doing it pretty well. Up here in August, they go over just a little bit and then they pull it back down. There's no way, this particular grower gave us the sample. I will tell you that for this presentation. We've been using it now for a while. This grower has told us there's no way that he would have been able to get in front of that curve and bring it down if he didn't have access to this data as it was happening over time. Right? It would have been one of these things at the end of the season. Let's say a report like this was available. You know, he's not going to look back in August and say, yeah, oh, I could have done this differently or that differently. That's something that he would have had to get in front of. And so that helped him by itself. This dark green line is the consumption. And the goal here is to narrow the difference between dark green line. Simple as that. Where they can. Agronomically, sometimes they can't, wherever they are in the season, but where they can, they bring it down. And you can see this grower is trying to do that as well. And they kind of fell off the chart a little bit there, but then got back in control of it. But it really provides a visual representation, very easy to see, of what they need to do to improve their irrigation efficiency. And then the rest of this data is surface and subsurface outflow. Some cases we combine that together. Maybe 5–10% of our clients actually have tail flow sensors at the end of their field, and they'll split off surface return flows. So that's a different data set that's displayed in the graph. In many cases, we combine the two, but that's where the rest of the water is going, and that's something they need to look at. And so I'm going to use a term that my kids use, gamifying. Right? They're on their phones playing games. Lots of other industries use apps and trends and graphs to help you, use kind of a gaming mentality to try to get yourself within where you need to be. I'm going to use that term lightly here because, of course, ag is not a game. Livelihood's on the line, because it really does break down the fact that as you're looking at this data throughout the season, really makes all the difference in the world. Instead of trying to calculate it at the end of the season, missing data streams, trying to look back 2, 3, 6 months and say, oh, this is what I could have done differently. Hogwash, no way to do it. Looking at it over time, that's the way to go about doing it. So that's where we'll leave it for today. I'm going to reference our website here if you want additional information. Go to SWIIM.com, and under resources, you'll see you can download our brochures. There's some case studies as well you can pull down, and then our video gallery, all under resources on the homepage. And I'd point you to the 2 middle ones on our website: webinar videos, dashboard reports. These are really good little 5-7 minute sections that talk about the dashboard, the water use report, and then past webinars. So we have a webinar where we talk about equipment integrations. We have a previous webinar where we dive a little bit more into the water balance. Those are recorded. They're there for you to look at whenever you have time, and a good resource to follow up on after the session. So with that, I want to thank you for taking this Friday afternoon, some of your time out of your lunch to learning a little bit more about dashboards. Cassandra, I'm going to pass it back to you, hopefully for some questions.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Kevin. It was actually really interesting. I know that you and I have talked a couple of times, but I think I learned a couple more facts about SWIIM definitely today. But I want to open the panel up for any questions that we might have for either SWIIM or for the Ag Center. If you want, please write it in the chat room and we can hopefully get those answered for you guys. I actually do have a couple questions for you, Kevin. What areas specifically does SWIIM service throughout California, outside, beyond? Where are your guys' services?
Primarily, we are in 3 states right now: California, Colorado, and Arizona. We do have some deployments outside of those states, and they're all SaaS deployments. So equipment's already in place. All we're doing is providing the water balance data. We're starting to expand further east. To be candid, we have interest all the way to the eastern seaboard, which surprises the living daylights out of me. That's not necessarily an area that we even targeted early on, but that seems to be becoming a pressure point. We're scoping a site down in South America right now, and we have some interest up in Canada. But by and large, we started in California and Colorado. That's where our biggest footprint is. And we're basically from the Mexican border down in Imperial all the way up just north of Fresno, up in your guys' neck of the woods, up in Madera and whatnot. We also kind of crisscross into the Colorado River area along California and Arizona as well, Palo Verde area, and then into Phoenix and Yuma and throughout Colorado.
Okay, awesome. Another one, what crops can SWIIM systems specifically monitor? Great
question. I'm not going to say we've done every type of crop, but we do annuals. The goals of a grower that's growing a perm crop, we have some almond and citrus folk, are going to be different than those that have the ability to cycle through annuals, right? So one example that comes to mind, outside of Bakersfield, they've got some perm crops. They have to keep those watered, right? So they're really, I mean, you can't stress an almond crop or citrus output. You just can't do it. But they also have, they can cycle annual crops with whatever water they have left over. So they're pretty tech advanced there, where they can go in and shift their water usage. Some growers that are all on perm, they're really watching that water usage. They're not going to stress the crop, but they're not going to put any more water than's absolutely necessary.
Got it. Well, it looks like too on the panelists, we got a couple of questions. One from Chad. Do you have an example you can share with the grower where offside with their water usage before SWIIM, and then once they started using SWIIM, they clearly changed their water usage behavior? Do you have anything on your website maybe they can refer to?
Yeah, so on our website, there's a section that says Testimonials, and you can hear some of the growers in their own words. You don't have to hear it from me, what they think about it, or you can see what they typed. We have some videos and some typed. I'll give you one example because this particular grower is not on the testimonial, so I absolutely will maintain his confidentiality. But this particular grower, he's outside of Fresno, and he was in an area where he was told by his groundwater sustainability agency to expect up to a 30% reduction of his groundwater over the next 5 years. So, yeah, it's a half a decade, but a 30% reduction potentially. So he started doing the math and figuring out that if that kicked in, and he knew it was going to be some percentage, maybe not 30, but something pretty draconian as far as how much water they're going to pull back, he'd lose up to $1 million worth of income every year, and that would be permanent. And then he'd suffer the startup costs to plant another crop. So what he did was he got in front of it, and he used SWIIM over a 3-year period, basically. He started with about a 8-9% savings on his water usage. And what he would do is he'd take those water use reports, he'd have weekly meetings with his irrigation staff, and he'd make just little changes. You know, not even always infrastructure changes, but just changes in how the sets were placed and how that water was being applied. He changed the time of day, just different things. And again, that's a perfect example. We can't go to a grower and say, hey, we know everything about your field. I mean, we kick the dirt, and everyone has ag background here at SWIIM, but probably because we have an ag background, we know you can't go tell a grower what to do. He or she's going to know. So he took the initiative, and every week he made some changes. So that first year he got about 8%. Second year he got another 6-7% savings on top of that, and it built upon itself. And by the third year he was up about 21% reduction in his water usage, and he was just elated because he knew he wasn't quite at 30, but he knew he could grow his crop with 20-some% less water. And so it's not like a magic bullet. You got to take the data and work it, right? And so our team, our grower relations team, would sit down on a technical level and tell him what we thought the data meant throughout the season. But then he took the initiative to make those changes, and that's what ended up happening for him.
We have another question here too, I see in the Q&A. It says, hi, Kevin, there are a lot of irrigation modules out there. How compatible is SWIIM at migrating other irrigation modules to your system?
Great question. There are a lot. It's like a new one every day that comes out, or every week, right? So we have stayed completely away from trying to compete with those irrigation modules, and instead we're integrating, because there's no reason for us to try to reinvent the wheel. Lots of folks have solutions out there, right? And they have the ones that they like. Again, we're data and hardware agnostic. So to us, if the data is quality, we can take and integrate it in. So we have the on-farm technology platform that we integrated here a couple years back that was out of Fresno State. And that gave us the ability to connect into basically any over-the-counter equipment provider or module to pull that data down. So if it's available on the cloud, or if we can dial in through the internet and get it, and 90% of them we can pull it out. Some cases there needs to be a little chip that's plugged in to make it internet ready. That's fine too. So we're compatible with just a whole slew of them. I'm not going to name them all. They're all on the website, but the answer is we're compatible with most. I'll tell you right now in the call, we're working now with Motorola to integrate into them. That was not one of our integrations. We have a couple of clients, or soon to be clients, that want to connect to water balance data so that they can compare that against just basic flow data. And so we're integrating into them. And it takes our tech team 2-3 weeks to build it's called an API hook, to go pull that data and then normalize it into our system. So not tough. So our sales team tells everyone this. I'll say that on this call. If you've got an equipment provider and they're not on our website, give us a call. We'll connect.
Awesome. There's another, what's the cost per acre? I don't know if you can answer that question, Kevin, but maybe you can give somebody an idea.
$1 million. Kidding. It varies. That's the short answer. So for the actual service, we charge what's called a field unit, right? So think about the boundaries of how you calculate a water balance. We have clients that are field level water balance. They want a water balance budgeted and balanced for every field. We also have growers that put 2 or 3 fields together. Maybe they're the same crop, maybe they're different crops, but they're right next to each other, and they want the water balance on those 2 fields. We then get more granular with some growers where they want block level monitoring. They might have 3 or 4 blocks on one field, and there's a water balance on every one of them. The more granular you get, the more equipment you have to put in. Of course, so you have that cost of the equipment. And then every water balance we do, costs more money to produce. So it really comes down to how granular the grower needs to get, we have a solution in the single digits all the way up to 20 or 30. But the difference with us is when we go and view a grower, if the solution's not going to work, we tell them.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. We also have another one. Are you using SWIIM to account for alternative transfer methods or other water transfers?
Yes. The short answer is yes in some cases. So some growers have contracts with municipal users. We have one right out of Southern California. That's a case example. I won't name them, where growers are transferring water and they're using us as the accounting mechanism for that. We've done some alternative transfers in Colorado, and we're planning on doing one here this year in Arizona. And for those that may not know what an ATM or an alternative transfer method is, what that is you have agricultural water. You don't want to move it out of ag. You know, it's not this buy and dry where you dry it up and move it permanently, but you want to take a portion of that water and, in essence, temporarily transfer it to another use. Might be environmental, might be municipal, might be another grower. So quantifying the bucket that you're using to deliver and consume, and that separate component is critical, as you can imagine, to make sure you don't overspend. You're like bouncing a check in your bank account. The whole goal there is to keep that water in ag primarily, and only transferred when it's needed instead of doing a permanent fallowing of the field. And so, yeah, we'd like to see more of those.
Awesome. I don't see any more questions on the panel, but I think maybe one more question or answer to leave everyone off with is, how is SWIIM going to bring value to my operation? Maybe we can give them 3 main points that they can take away from this webinar.
All right, so you have increasing yields, reduction in water usage, and tracking the water that you have. You know, we've seen, before we started doing work within the groundwater sustainability areas of California, we started with river water along the Colorado River Basin. The fights there were going on well before any potential fights that we could see in California. So we saw firsthand when the attorneys got involved what that meant as far as impact goes to all the stakeholders, growers being most affected because they control the water. So at the end of the day, having an accounting of your water is critical. Whether you use SWIIM or any other source, you've got to get your arms around your water usage. It used to be an estimate was good enough, you know, and I'll leave you with one point. We've done enough of these deployments now where we can say on average, when we go in and we start auditing water, we find that the data the grower thought he or she had as far as water usage can be off by as much as 20 or 30%. That much. Mm-hmm. And that's not an exaggeration. That's not puffing. That's just what we've seen. And okay, so before water resources became more tight in some of these areas, that might have been good enough. You know, I mean, there are efficiencies in any irrigation system. Any water engineer will tell you that. That's truthful. But if you're thinking if you think this is the amount of water you're using and you're off by 20 or 30%, and I will add, sometimes it was 20, 30% higher. Sometimes it was 20 or 30% less. Mm-hmm. Depending on where you are on that scale, that could matter. And I can't possibly see, again, everyone in SWIIM, we love ag. We come from an ag background. So we're not just programmers sitting in an office. We kick dirt. Some of us are growers. Some of us have grown, but we all have deep ag roots. And if we're going to see ag sustain itself, there's not a week that goes by where you're not going to see an article talking about the water resource constraints. And that you got to get your arms around it. So I'll leave you with that.
Yeah, especially in California.
and Cassandra, that story is being told not just in California. I mean, California is the 800-pound gorilla. It's our breadbasket, of course. You know,
yeah.
That's where all the media is going to come from. But we're seeing that story told in all kinds of areas. Eastern Seaboard, which who would have thought, as an example.
Seriously. Well, awesome, Kevin. You know, I think this is really interesting. I hope everyone enjoyed this. Like I said, we were really proud to be affiliated with you guys and the work that you guys have done, especially in the Central Valley. If anyone else does have any questions, feel free to always reach out to Kevin or I, or via any of our websites. But thank you guys all for coming. We really, really appreciate it. And thank you, Kevin. It was awesome.
Thank you, Cassandra. Everyone, have a great weekend. Appreciate it.
Have a great weekend, everyone.